Think about you buy a neat little retail storefront on a busy corner. You put a glowing green cross in the front window. You hire a licensed professional in a crisp white coat, and you open the doors to an endless line of regular customers waiting to pick up their monthly blood pressure pills, diabetes, medication, and cough syrup. On paper, it looks like the absolute golden holy grail of American small business ownership. It feels completely recession-proof. After all, people get old, people get sick, and people need the exact same life-saving prescriptions filled every single month for the rest of their natural lives. But here is the brutal, terrifying catch that nobody warns you about before you sign a commercial lease. In any given year in the United States, more than 80% of every single prescription filled across the entire country is for a generic drug, not a flashy brand-name medication. And generic drugs, the exact pills that every ordinary person assumes are the bread and butter cash cows of a neighborhood drugstore, frequently generate the absolute thinnest, most pathetic profit margins of anything sitting on the shelf. In fact, a small business owner can run a pharmacy with surgical perfection. You can hand over the exact right pills in the exact right bottle, follow every single state and federal regulation to the absolute letter, provide world-class patient counseling, and still manage to lose money on that exact transaction the very second the digital paperwork clears. Not because you made a single mistake as an operator, but because a shadowy corporate entity that your patient standing at the counter has never heard of already decided what that prescription was worth, weeks before the customer ever set foot inside your store. So, if independent pharmacies are constantly dispensing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of critical life-saving medicine every single month, why are so many owners struggling to pay themselves a basic living wage? Why are thousands of drugstores closing their doors permanently across the nation while total prescription drug spending surges past $700 billion annually? Welcome to the World Money Desk. Today, we are breaking down the brutal, hidden unit economics of owning a pharmacy in America and exposing the invisible corporate cartel that eats small business profits for breakfast. Before you can ever sell a single tablet of aspirin or count a single pill, you have to face the cold, hard reality of getting the doors open in the first place. Getting into the pharmacy business does not begin with purchasing inventory. It begins with an overwhelming avalanche of bureaucratic paperwork, and every single piece of that paperwork comes with a heavy price tag and a grueling timeline. You need a pharmacist in charge license, a state pharmacy permit, and a federal registration with the Drug Enforcement Administration just to legally hold and handle controlled substances on your premises. Then comes enrollment with federal and state healthcare programs like Medicare and Medicaid. That enrollment process alone can easily drag on for 3 agonizing months. State permits routinely take anywhere from 2 to 4 months on their own, sitting on government desks while your bank account bleeds cash. Then you have the physical build-out of the commercial space. You cannot just put up basic retail shelves and call it a day. A modern pharmacy requires specialized plumbing, heavy-duty electrical upgrades for commercial-grade refrigeration units that keep temperature-sensitive biological drugs stable, heavy reinforced security measures, prescription counting machines, and highly specialized point-of-sale software capable of communicating instantly with insurance networks. When you tally up the initial capital requirements, a realistic all-in startup cost lands anywhere between $400,000 and $800,000 before a single paying customer ever steps foot over your threshold. A detailed operational breakdown of a typical independent pharmacy launch reveals that by month 6, once you factor in pre-opening payroll, legal fees, build-out expenses, and enough working capital to survive those brutally slow initial months, your total cash drain reaches around $647,000. And remember, that massive capital pile vanishes before you have stocked a single shelf with actual inventory. Opening inventory alone demands an immediate layout of $70,000, $80,000, or even $100,000 in pure cash. Pharmacies do not have the luxury of stocking just a few popular items. You must maintain a vast array of expensive pharmaceuticals in sufficient quantities, sitting silently on glass shelves waiting for a prescription that might arrive tomorrow afternoon, or might not walk through the door for another 6 weeks. Add in the technology stack, the pharmacy management software, verification systems, and high-definition security networks mandated by federal regulators, and you are looking at another $25,000 to $50,000 just to get the computer servers running. When an entrepreneur decides to step into this arena, there are really two distinct paths to entry, and the financial trade-offs between them dictate your survival chances over the first 3 years. The first path appears to be the sensible, low-risk route. Buying an existing, fully licensed independent pharmacy that already possesses an established patient base, operational licenses, and active insurance billing contracts. On the surface, this option looks like an absolute no-brainer. Someone else already endured the regulatory delays, absorbed the painful construction costs, and suffered through the slow, revenue-barren first year of operation. But existing pharmacies almost never sell cheap. When you acquire an established store, you are not just buying physical fixtures and leftover inventory, you are paying a massive premium for goodwill. You are paying for the years of community trust built by the previous owner and for a patient roster that took over a decade to assemble. The second path is building a brand new pharmacy completely from scratch inside an empty retail shell. This path requires significantly less upfront cash for goodwill, but it demands immensely more in construction costs, permitting delays, and pure unadulterated burn rate. You will spend months paying full commercial rent, utility bills, and insurance premiums with absolute zero revenue coming through the door while waiting for government inspectors to sign off on your facility. Neither path is cheap, easy, or forgiving. One path trades cold hard cash for saved time. The other trades wasted time for saved cash. Most prospective owners construct business plans assuming a clean 6 to 12-month window between deciding to open and actually serving patients. But this is precisely where the first catastrophic hidden cost creeps into the balance sheet. Every single month of unexpected delay is a month of high-stakes commercial rent, business insurance, and interest payments on bank loans with zero offsetting revenue. Building contractors run late. Municipal inspectors reschedule appointments. Insurance credentialing, the tedious corporate clearance process that permits you to bill health insurance companies, can drag on for an additional 30 to 90 days beyond your worst-case estimate. An owner who carefully budgeted for 6 months of pre-opening overhead frequently finds themselves writing checks for 9, 10, or 12 months of deadweight costs before dispensing a single pill. Once the ribbon is cut and the front doors finally swing open, the real operational expense nightmare begins. First, you have commercial rent. In a high-traffic retail corridor or medical office building, lease payments can effortlessly consume 10 to 20% of your total gross monthly revenue before you pay a single employee or settle a single drug invoice. Second, and far more lethal, is payroll. In a normal retail business, labor is a flexible, variable expense. If foot traffic slows down, a coffee shop owner cuts staff hours to protect operating cash flow. In a pharmacy, labor is completely inflexible and legally non-negotiable. Federal and state laws strictly dictate that a licensed, certified pharmacist must be physically present on the premises at every single moment the pharmacy is open to the public. You cannot operate for 10 minutes without one. And licensed pharmacists command serious top-tier professional salaries. In the United States, the median annual pay for a registered pharmacist sits at well over $136,000 a year. Multiply that baseline salary across the total operating hours a community pharmacy must maintain to stay competitive, often 60 to 70 hours a week. Add in certified pharmacy technicians, front counter cashiers, and a designated pharmacist in charge who frequently commands an even higher salary, and payroll instantly becomes the single largest, most crushing line item on your balance sheet, routinely dwarfing every other operational expense combined. Third, you face massive insurance obligations. Commercial general liability, property insurance, and specialized professional malpractice coverage tailored for businesses handling controlled substances are absolute non-negotiables. You cannot open the door without them. Fourth, there is inventory financing. As modern medicine advances, pharmacies are forced to carry increasingly astronomical specialty drugs. Carrying that hyper-expensive inventory on a revolving commercial line of credit, waiting weeks or months for insurance reimbursements to clear, starts eating away at your working capital long before those medication bottles ever leave the shelf. This is where novice owners make their fatal calculation error. They assume that once inventory sits on the shelf, selling it generates a predictable, straightforward profit margin. It does not. To understand why selling medicine in America is financially upside down, you have to meet the three shadow corporations that quietly dictate what almost every pharmacy in the country gets paid. They are called Pharmacy Benefit Managers, or PBMs for short. And here is the simplest way to understand what a PBM actually does in the real world. Imagine you are the pharmacy owner. You buy a bottle of prescription pills from a wholesale pharmaceutical distributor for $80 cold cash. A patient walks in with an insurance card. The patient's insurance company hires a third-party middleman, the PBM, to negotiate on behalf of the health plan and decide precisely how much money your pharmacy will be reimbursed when you hand that bottle over to the patient. The PBM never buys the medicine. The PBM never ships the medicine. The PBM never touches a pill, inspects a bottle, or speaks to a sick patient standing at your counter. Yet, the PBM dictates down to the exact penny whether your business makes a modest profit or suffers a guaranteed financial loss on that prescription. You might charge $100 for a life-saving drug based on your acquisition costs and overhead, only to discover after submitting the electronic claim that the PBM has unilaterally decided to pay you $92. The massive corporate contracts explaining these payment terms span thousands of pages of incomprehensible legal jargon and complex mathematical formulas that even veteran healthcare attorneys struggle to decode. And here is the truly terrifying part. There are three massive corporate conglomerates that control this entire landscape. CVS Caremark, owned by CVS Health, Express Scripts, owned by the insurance giant Cigna, and OptumRX, owned by United Health Group, the largest healthcare company on planet Earth. Together, these three behemoths process roughly 80% of every single prescription claim filed across the entire United States. Not 80% of a small submarket, 80% of the entire 330 million-person American population. Express Scripts alone processes 30% of all national claims after securing massive multi-billion-dollar benefit contracts. CVS Caremark handles 27%, and OptumRx controls 23%. When three cartel-like corporate entities hold the keys to 80% of your potential customer base, you do not have a negotiation. You do not get to bargain over fair profit margins. You either accept whatever abysmal payment terms they shove across the table, or you instantly forfeit the legal ability to fill prescriptions for 8 out of every 10 human beings walking past your store. So, what happens after an independent pharmacy owner swallows their pride and signs these one-sided PBM contracts? Welcome to the bizarre phenomenon known as negative reimbursement. In almost any normal industry, whether you sell hardware, shoes, or automobiles, if an item costs you $100 to buy wholesale, you sell it for $120 to cover your rent, employee wages, and profit. In the pharmacy world, the basic laws of free market economics are completely inverted. Under PBM contracts, a pharmacy is frequently forced to fill a prescription where the mandated reimbursement price is lower than the actual wholesale acquisition cost paid by the pharmacy to buy the drug in the first place. Imagine purchasing a specialized medication from your wholesaler for $150 out of pocket. You fill the order, dispense the bottle, print the label, and complete the compliance paperwork. Weeks later, the PBM processes the claim and remits a final payment of $140. You just paid $10 out of your own pocket for the absolute privilege of serving that patient, and that is before calculating a single penny of pharmacist wages, store rent, electricity, or bottle packaging. Every single bottle sold under those specific contractual terms represents a mathematically guaranteed financial loss. Yet, pharmacy owners routinely continue filling these toxic prescriptions every single day. Why? because refusing to dispense the medication means turning the patient away empty-handed. If you turn that patient away, they will immediately transfer their entire family's prescriptions, including their profitable non-pharmacy retail business, to a massive corporate chain down the street. PBMs fully understand this hostage dynamic, and they exploit it with absolute, ruthless mathematical precision. If negative reimbursement sounds like an unfair business arrangement, wait until you examine the financial trap door hidden beneath the floorboards. For years, PBMs utilized a devious financial mechanism known as direct and indirect remuneration fees, or DIR fees. This system allowed PBMs to reach directly into an independent pharmacy's bank account 6, 8, or even 12 months after a prescription had already been filled and claw back huge chunks of money. The mechanism was brilliantly sinister. A pharmacy would dispense a drug, submit the claim, receive an initial reimbursement payment, and record the transaction as settled on their accounting books. Then, half a year later, the PBM would execute a retroactive performance audit based on obscure, moving target metrics such as patient medication, adherence rates, or generic dispensing percentages. Based on these arbitrary metrics, the PBM would unilaterally deduct a retroactive fee, seizing back 3, 5, or 8% of the gross transaction value. Government data revealed that these retroactive clawback fees exploded by an astonishing, mind-boggling 100,000% between 2010 and 2020. They expanded from a tiny fraction of a percent of total prescription sales to eating nearly 4% of a pharmacy's gross top-line revenue by 2023. Imagine running a grocery store or a clothing boutique where every single sale you make in January can be quietly marked down by an invisible corporate third party in August, with the difference automatically debited from your checking accounts without warning. Forecasting business cash flow under these predatory conditions became utterly impossible. A pharmacy owner could never truly know whether their store was operating at a profit or a loss until many months after the accounting period closed. Federal healthcare regulators eventually intervened, issuing a mandate that took effect on the 1st of January 2024. The new rule required all PBM fees to be calculated and applied up front at the exact point of sale, eliminating the retroactive clawback timing trick. But while the new regulations solved the timing problem, it did absolutely nothing to cap the actual size of the fees. The cash still evaporates out of the pharmacy's bank account. It just leaves instantly at the register under rebranded names like performance adjustments or network access concessions. Given this brutal financial landscape, you have to ask a fundamental question. If dispensing prescription medication is a minefield of negative reimbursements and corporate fees, where on earth does a pharmacy actually make real money? The shocking answer is that survival rarely comes from the prescription counter. The true profit engines of a modern independent pharmacy are dispensing fees, front-of-store retail merchandise, seasonal flu shots, clinical consultation services, and diagnostic testing. Consider this mind-bending economic reality. A bottle of generic blood pressure medication that costs the pharmacy $4 to acquire might yield less than 50 cents in actual net profit after PBM adjustments. Meanwhile, a basic paper greeting card sitting in a display rack near the cash register, purchased wholesale for $1 and sold for $4, generates more real net profit than multiple complex prescription fills combined. This is precisely why retail floor plan design in a modern pharmacy is an exercise in consumer psychology. The aisles surrounding the waiting area are stocked with high-margin over-the-counter vitamins, seasonal decorations, cosmetics, and snacks. These items carry gross profit margins several times higher than prescription pharmaceuticals, helping subsidize the losses incurred behind the professional dispensing counter. Forward-thinking owners are also shifting heavily into medication therapy management. In these clinical sessions, a pharmacist sits down with a complex patient taking dozens of medications, conducting a comprehensive review to eliminate dangerous drug interactions and unnecessary duplications. Instead of selling a physical product bound by PBM price controls, the pharmacy bills for the licensed pharmacist's elite clinical expertise and time, Furthermore, administration of vaccines completely revolutionized pharmacy unit economics. During global health crises, independent pharmacies transformed into critical frontline immunization hubs, administering flu shots, shingles, vaccines, and routine immunizations yields healthy clinical service fees, turning a service that barely existed in small drugstores 20 years ago into a vital pillar of annual net income. Now, let us examine the most volatile segment of the entire pharmaceutical supply chain: specialty drugs. These high-tier medications used to treat complex conditions like oncology cases, multiple sclerosis, and rare genetic disorders can easily cost anywhere from $600 to over $10,000 for a single 30-day supply. Specialty medications account for only about 4% of all prescriptions filled by volume across the United States. Yet, they represent an astonishing, staggering 70% of all prescription drug spending nationwide. That represents a gargantuan, breathtaking concentration of capital flowing through a minuscule number of individual transactions. For an independent pharmacy owner, specialty drugs represent the ultimate double-edged sword. Successfully dispensing these ultra-expensive therapies can generate more gross top-line revenue from 3 patients than an entire month of dispensing standard generic cholesterol pills. But managing a specialty pharmacy operation requires specialized cold chain refrigeration, climate-controlled shipping infrastructure, intensive patient monitoring systems, and agonizing prior authorization clearance processes that can drag on for weeks. To make matters worse, PBMs aggressively restrict access to this lucrative market. PBMs routinely mandate that patients taking high-cost specialty drugs must use specialized mail-order pharmacies owned directly by the PBM itself, effectively locking independent operators out of 70% of national drug spend. And on the rare occasion, an independent pharmacy is permitted to dispense a high-cost specialty drug, the negative reimbursement problem becomes a catastrophic financial nuclear strike. Industry trade publications have documented horrifying verified cases where an independent pharmacy dispensed a single-month supply of a high-cost specialty drug only to have the PBM reimburse them far below acquisition cost, resulting in a devastating net loss of over $11,000 on one single prescription fill. One patient, one bottle, $11,000 of clean business capital wiped out instantly, with the owner having zero recourse until reconciliation reports arrive months after the damage is done. When an industry's operating costs are fixed and inflation-driven, but its top-line reimbursement prices are controlled by a hostile corporate oligopoly, the structural mismatch eventually spills over into the real world, not as an abstract line on a spreadsheet, but as brick-and-mortar storefronts closing their doors forever. By 2021, nearly 30% of the roughly 89,000 retail pharmacies that operated across the United States a decade earlier had ceased to exist. Over 26,000 community drugstores vanished from Main Street America. Independent drugstores and pharmacies located in economically vulnerable, predominantly Black and Latino urban neighborhoods were wiped out at rates drastically higher than affluent suburbs. In rural America, the devastation was breathtaking. Between 2013 and 2022, roughly 10% of all rural independent pharmacies shuttered permanently. An exhaustive academic study revealed that 80% of surviving rural independent pharmacies were consistently being reimbursed below their actual cost to acquire and dispense basic medications. The vast majority of small-town drugstores in America were losing money on the core act of filling prescriptions before paying a single dollar in store rent or employee wages. The financial crisis was not confined to independent mom-and-pop operators. The giant corporate chains were equally battered by declining reimbursement rates and mounting debt burdens. Rite Aid, one of the most iconic pharmacy chains in American history, collapsed into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, liquidating hundreds of stores across dozens of states. Shortly thereafter, Walgreens announced aggressive restructuring plans to shutter approximately 2,500 stores, over a quarter of its entire national footprint. These are not weak, inexperienced operators failing in isolation. These are colossal market leaders, closing thousands of locations during the exact same period that total national spending on prescription drugs crossed $700 billion annually. How did the market transform into such a rigged, anti-competitive trap? The answer lies in a massive wave of corporate vertical integration that fundamentally re-engineered the American healthcare system. Back in 2007, CVS, then primarily a retail drugstore chain, executed a landmark merger with Caremark, one of the nation's largest PBMs. In 2018, they went even further, acquiring the health insurance giant Aetna for $69 billion. That mega merger created a single colossal corporate entity that simultaneously owns the health insurance plan, owns the PBM that sets prescription reimbursement rates, and owns thousands of retail drugstores competing directly against every independent pharmacy on the block. United Health Group pulled off the exact same maneuver with its OptumRX ecosystem. A damning investigation by the Federal Trade Commission revealed the terrifying scale of this consolidation. Back in 2016, the four largest vertically integrated healthcare conglomerates captured 14% of all healthcare dollars spent across the United States. By 2023, their market share exploded to 22%, meaning four corporate giants now control more than one-fifth of the entire $4 trillion American healthcare economy, sucking up over $1 trillion annually. The FTC investigation exposed that these integrated PBM behemoths captured 68% of all revenue generated from dispensing specialty drugs nationwide, actively steering the most lucrative, high-margin prescriptions directly toward their own corporate-owned specialty mail-order subsidiaries. Meanwhile, independent pharmacies were intentionally left to absorb the low-margin, high-risk generic transactions that no one else wanted. To be fair, PBM executives strongly reject this cartel narrative. Corporate spokespersons frequently point out that independent pharmacies still comprise over 40% of their national retail networks, and argue that PBMs save American consumers billions by aggressively driving down drug prices. But for a small, independent operator in a rural town, competing against a corporate entity that acts as your regulator, your claim adjuster, your primary competitor, and your insurance payer all at once is a game rigged from the start. Beneath all the financial engineering lies a severe human crisis. For over a decade, retail pharmacists across America have reported being crushed under an unsustainable mountain of administrative duties. Pharmacists are no longer just verifying prescriptions. They are forced to run high-volume vaccination clinics, battle PBM rejections over phone lines, process prior authorizations, manage chronic drug shortages, and answer a constant barrage of patient phone calls, all while dispensing hundreds of prescriptions per shift. Comprehensive industry surveys revealed that over 71% of pharmacists experienced extreme severe workplace overload, even before global health crises escalated burnout rates past 60%. The immense pressure eventually triggered historic labor unrest. In late 2023, pharmacy staff at CVS and Walgreens locations organized unprecedented walkouts, shutting down counter operations to protest unsafe understaffing levels that endangered patient safety. This labor crisis accelerated a dramatic technological pivot. To escape sky-high professional labor costs, giant corporate chains are investing heavily in automated central fill facilities and robotic micro-fulfillment centers. Walgreens built massive automated facilities capable of filling and packaging tens of thousands of prescriptions daily with minimal human intervention. These robotic megafacilities have already unlocked over $500 million in structural cost savings by slashing store-level inventory requirements and speeding up fulfillment. Central fill operations allow corporate giants to process medications at massive logistics warehouses, looking more like automated Amazon distribution centers than neighborhood drugstores, and ship pre-packaged prescriptions directly to retail counters for quick pickup. For an independent pharmacy owner, this technological arms race represents an insurmountable barrier. You cannot deploy $20 million robotic fulfillment centers to optimize your labor overhead. You must either staff every single operating hour with high-cost, fully licensed human professionals, or lock your doors completely. Every dollar spent on modern automation is a dollar an independent operator simply does not have. So let us run the final definitive balance sheet on what a year of owning an independent pharmacy actually looks like in the real world. Let us start with the optimistic scenario where operational execution goes exceptionally well. In a strong year, your independent pharmacy generates $3 million in gross top-line revenue, matching the national independent average. Your gross profit margin holds at 22%, leaving you with approximately $660,000 to cover every operating expense: commercial rent, property insurance, utilities, and general overhead consume roughly $180,000. Payroll, including your own professional pharmacist salary and support staff, eats another $340,000. What remains is approximately $140,000 in net annual profit, a modest sum that must cover both your personal risk and the interest payments on the $650,000 of capital initially deployed to open the doors. Now let us look at the realistic scenario, the one experienced by thousands of pharmacy owners across America today. A significant chunk of your high-cost generic prescriptions get hit with negative reimbursements, forcing you to absorb thousands in unrecoverable losses. Point-of-sale performance fees shave 2 percentage points directly off your gross margin. One or two dominant PBMs renegotiate their network payment contracts downward, cutting your reimbursement rates by 3%. Your net profit margin instantly collapses from 5% to a negative 1%. That expected $140,000 in net profit completely vanishes, transforming into a grueling $20,000 annual cash loss for the year. And remember, you filled the exact same number of prescriptions, worked the exact same 80-hour work weeks, served the exact same loyal patients, and made zero operational errors. The gap between a prosperous year and financial ruin in this industry is governed by roughly $150,000 in arbitrary reimbursement swings that the business owner has absolute zero ability to control. Over 15 million Americans rely exclusively on independent community pharmacies for their healthcare needs. These patients are disproportionately lower income, elderly, and live in rural medical deserts far from regional healthcare hubs. When a neighborhood pharmacy closes, a community does not just lose a retail store, it loses its most accessible, trusted human connection to the entire healthcare system. So, if you ever decide to step into this arena and open a pharmacy, remember what is actually being sold across that counter. It was never really about the pills. The pills are a low-margin, high-risk commodity controlled by massive corporate cartels. What an independent pharmacy actually sells is human trust, community access, and personal care in a healthcare system that grows more impersonal and predatory every single day. The operators who survive this brutal industry are not those who fill the most bottles. They are the ones who realize early that the pill was never the business model.